What would you do if you just came home and there was a priest waiting for you? An uninvited priest.
I would be more concerned about where my dog is. What did he do to my dog and how fast can I leave?
Nova's the one that called the priest.
How dare she?
I'm just kidding. She would never do that to you. She'd call the priest on me if I ever came over to your house.
This loud girl.
This girl is so loud. Jess's dog Nova, who you should all follow on Instagram.
On Instagram, it's Nova the Korg.
Yes, adorable. But I was having a sleepover at Jess's one night and we were watching a scary movie. We were all laying on the couch. Every time I made a noise like gas, Nova gave me the dirtiest look. Like, can this girl calm down, Mom? Like, why is she still here?
She would do little like hoofs.
Yeah, she's like, why? She's like, calm down.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to perform an autopsy?
Ever wanted to know how accurate your favorite crime drama is?
If you're brave enough,
Join us inside the morgue. Hey everybody, we just wanted to give a quick trigger warning for this episode. One of the true crimes that we talk about gets into some extreme violence, sexual assault against minors, and a little bit of dismemberment. So if that's something that you're not comfortable listening to or might be a little sensitive to you, fast forward through the case about Hans Schmidt and check us out next time. Love you guys.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Inside the Morgue. We're your favorite pathology duo, Jess and Alice. And this week we're going to be talking about exorcisms once again, since we just can't get enough of it.
We can't get enough of them.
Can't stop, won't stop.
And they're a theme in these shows apparently, because
it's like a trope that they do. Everybody wants to do an episode about exorcisms apparently, and
we want to talk about them apparently. So keep it up.
It's entertaining. Yeah. So we watched Criminal Minds, which also Criminal Minds, the show, was a fan submission, one of your listener suggestions. So we thank you for giving us this suggestion, because this show really wasn't on our radar because we didn't think it had a lot to talk about until we came across this episode.
Yeah.
So thank you. And again, if you guys have any episodes out there or like specific shows you want us to watch, email us, DM us on Instagram. We're down for literally watching anything.
Even if it's like, oh, I don't think this is a good show, give it to me. I want to watch bad television.
I want to watch it.
I want to watch it. Tell me. Give me new shows to watch. I'm running out of material.
So we found Criminal Minds season 4, episode 17, titled Demonology. But before we get into the episode, Dylan, where can the people find you if they want to start their own podcast?
If you're looking to start your own podcast and you want to do it right and bright and nice, come on down to Young Junk. You can do that. Email me, Dylan@youngjunk.com, and we'll get something started.
Yeah.
Just look at Alice's setup. It's so lovely.
So lovely.
He hung these up.
I hung them up.
He hung
them up for us.
All right, we ready to talk exorcisms?
Let's get into it. This is what the people wanted.
This is what the people want. All right, so show opens up hardcore with some like flashes of exorcism scenes. A man is screaming, tied down to a bed. Classic exorcism tropes. Emily Prentice, who's one of the investigators or special agents, finds out that a friend of hers has died through another friend. But there's obviously more going on because she's more distressed than just like, oh, a friend passed away. Mm-hmm. She believes somebody may have killed her friend. This friend, Matthew, died of a possible heart attack, but he was young. He was a young guy. He did have substance abuse issues in his past that she talks about, but something just doesn't feel right to her. And she's an FBI agent, so she's going to look into it. And she sees that there's another person, Tommy V, who died in his home from dehydration, according to another agent, Penelope, who I freaking love. I love Penelope.
She's my favorite.
I've posted this on my Forensic Alice Instagram account before when I first got glasses, because I've always said it's my goal in life to be a forensic TV trope. And I always want to be the character that's like the perky, creepy girl with glasses. Mm-hmm. And that's Penelope in this show.
You are.
And that's what I want to be. Of course, I'm not wearing my glasses today, everybody, but it would be really cool if I was. Next time I will. Emily Prentice needs to investigate this further. So she asks permission first if she can have some leeway on her other work to investigate this, and her team offers to help her as well. So they're looking into if these deaths are connected, and her and Morgan are at the morgue and they're looking at Matthew's body. Okay. See, I was going to say like they'd never let this happen because she's not even next of kin, but she's the freaking FBI. So if the FBI comes to the morgue and is like, we need to see this body, they're going to show you. Ask questions. They're going to show you the body. So never mind.
Could you imagine if the FBI came to our morgue and was like, I need to see this body?
You will do a full post. Which is a post-mortem examination, just shorthand for it. So it's a full autopsy. So you're going to take everything out. You're going to look at all the organs. You're going to look at the brain even, just to make sure that it was cardiac related and to rule out that anything else could have caused it. Because for someone this age, that is an abnormal thing to pass away from, especially if you don't have any kind of cardiac history.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it can happen. Like,
it can happen.
People
it's not
on the
impossible.
younger side can definitely have like a family history of cardiac related issues, which would make sense.
Right.
But if there isn't, then we have to investigate like everything.
Yeah.
So, could it have been possible that someone induced the heart attack? The easiest way to do that would be to inject them with potassium, but there were no traces of potassium found in Matthew's system, and it's also possible to induce a heart attack by injecting them with epinephrine, but because that wouldn't register typically, because it's identical to the natural adrenaline that is found in your body. And it also appears that there are marks on the wrists of his body, like he may have been tied to something, but the ME is like, oh no, they're superficial. Just like totally disregarding that.
Yeah.
And still she's like, yeah, no, it's a heart attack.
She was going toe to toe with the FBI agents, which is a theme in this show and maybe real life. I've never had to interact with the FBI, but it's like the FBI is coming on somebody else's turf to like take over an investigation. So it's like people get territorial and protective of their work, kind of understandably, but we'll find out later. This Emmy was wrong.
She also mentions that he had bled heavily from his nose, but with the damage to his septum, her best guess would it have been prolonged abuse of cocaine or methamphetamine. And I'm also going to give this a green flag because this can be true. We've seen this in a couple of our cases, like with like prolonged drug abuse. If they're like constantly like snorting something,
it'll damage your septum. So don't snort stuff, guys. It'll damage
You'll literally
your
have like a little hole in your septum.
Yeah. And sometimes you have to check for the hole. Poke it up in there. Don't make us do that. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. So for the autopsy of Tommy V, he died of dehydration, and there were traces of prescription antipsychotics in his system, and the family said that there was a history of mental illness going on, but it also appears that he has the same ligature marks as Matthew, but the ME's like, oh, they look like they're self-inflicted wounds and the history of mental illness is there, so she and the police aren't investigating it any further because they don't suspect foul play.
To be fair, if somebody came to me and told me that this heart attack and a dehydration case of two people who I didn't know knew each other were related or trying to relate them in any way, I'd be like, what are you talking about?
Like you're grasping at straws here.
What do you mean? So it does seem crazy, but in the show it makes sense. There are other clues that were found at the scene that make sense. But just looking at the bodies like this Emmy is doing, because that's what a morgue worker's job is to focus on the body. Like, she even says that she's like, there's no medical way or scientific way that these are connected.
To connect them, yeah.
Which might be what the killer wanted. So they have 2 bodies with ligature marks, and this Emmy dismisses them because there's no medical reason to connect them. The team splits up and investigates Matthew and Tommy V's residences. At Tommy's place, they notice that there's scratch marks on the floor under the bed that looks like the bed was shaking and moving a lot, and he was apparently hearing voices and cursing God and had been in bed for days. The same marks were found on the floor under the bed in Matthew's room when they went to go check Matthew's house. And the only connection that these men have is that they had traveled to Spain in the same week 4 months ago. So there's a pattern of evil in the soul and scuff marks on the floor. The fiance of Tommy V she didn't outright say it, but it seems like she was very devoutly religious and said that she believes his soul's at rest now and that he was fighting with inner demons and stuff. And Matthew's parents kind of have a similar vibe. But the dad in Matthew's case was more willing to admit that it was like a drug related incident, and that it was awful to watch his son go through that, as opposed to Matthew's mother, who was like convinced it was the devil. So drug addiction and schizophrenia are 2 afflictions most likely to present as demonic possessions. We've talked about this before. We've talked about at least 2 different movies. At
least 2 other times we have talked about exorcisms.
Yeah, our first Young Junk episode was the possession of Hannah Grace. And then our first Halloween episodes are episodes 19 and
Autopsy
20.
of Jane Doe.
Yeah, I think they're 19 and 20. There are Autopsy of Jane Doe episodes. We get into... oh, wait, no. Was that exorcism or that was witchcraft? That wasn't really an exorcism.
Oh, yeah, that was witchcraft.
Yeah.
There was definitely one other time, though.
Yeah, what other... If you guys remember, when else did we talk about that? Because we definitely talked about it more than once. So it seems like Morgan is the only logical one thinking here that they have an unsub. Anybody who watches Criminal Minds knows. Suspect.
The unsub.
Who is using ritualized killings as exorcisms.
So in the next few scenes, we see 2 really suspicious priests holding out a picture of a man who's probably going to be the next target.
Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry, forgot to mention this. They also open the show with this priest burning a picture of Matthew.
Yes.
In a sink. Which is something I think is cool about Criminal Minds. At least the few episodes of Criminal Minds that I've seen. I watched the first few seasons and I want to get back into it. I do like it as a show. They kind of show you who the killer is throughout sometimes, from what I've seen. So
I was so obsessed with Criminal Minds during like my high school and early college years that is what drove me to want to start studying criminal justice, because I thought I wanted to go to Quantico and like I thought I wanted to be an FBI agent and like a detective and all of that. And then I realized that this is not realistic at all.
You could have done it, but your path was meant to be different.
I know, yeah.
You're meant to be here.
I was so obsessed with Criminal Minds. I watched every season.
Oh my God. See, this is crazy to me that this is the first time we're doing a Criminal Minds episode. If it was that impactful to your career trajectory.
Now that I'm in the career I am, like looking back, there really isn't a lot of autopsy stuff that the show does, because it's more of like, gotta catch the unsub.
Hey, Dexter is one of my favorite shows, and we've talked about it twice, even though there's not a lot of autopsy stuff.
I'm currently on season 3. She convinced me to watch it, and now I'm obsessed.
We did it, everybody. By we, I mean me.
So the man that was in the picture that the priests are holding, who is our next victim, he's now hearing voices and he's hallucinating, and he goes home, and then he just finds one of these priests, like the main priest person, just in his home, and this guy is ready to perform an unsanctioned exorcism.
What would you do if you just came home and there was a priest waiting for you?
I would be more concerned about where my dog is. What did he do to my dog, and how fast can I leave?
Nova's the one that called the priest.
How dare she?
I'm just kidding. She would never do that to you. She'd call the priest on me if I ever came over to your house.
This loud girl.
This girl is so loud. Nova, Jess's dog Nova, who you should all follow on Instagram. Jess, would you like?
Instagram, it's Nova the Korg.
Yes, adorable. But I was having a sleepover at Jess's one night, and we were watching a scary movie. And every time we were all laying on the couch, every time I made a noise like gas, Nova gave me the dirtiest look. Like, can this girl calm down, Mom? Like, why is she still here?
She would do little like hoofs.
Yeah, she's like, why? She's like, calm down. Yeah.
She's like, I'm trying to sleep here. It's like 10 o'clock.
So Nova would call a priest for me. She'd be like, get the demons out of her.
So at the house, there's also 3 other priests, and they're all like holding this man down and tying him to the bed. And it just so happens that this man was also in Spain the same week as the other 2 were. The ME is suspecting that it is a brain aneurysm as his cause of death.
Yeah, because this guy dies.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, they don't show you his death, but like the next scene is them coming to the crime scene.
Yeah.
And he's dead.
And they're like, oh no, just a brain aneurysm. Mm-hmm. But there's the same scuff marks underneath the bed, on the floor. And yes, an aneurysm could be induced by stress. Like if you're restrained on your bed while someone is trying to banish the devil out of your body. Certainly a stressful situation.
I mean, yeah.
So back at Quantico, Penelope comes to the rescue with another connection. She found a bulletin created by Matthew for people who felt betrayed by their faith. The week that the 3 of them were in Spain, the services at this church that they all were at, they were canceled when a priest there died. He died of a heart attack, but there's a lot of conspiracy chatter on the internets that say otherwise. People think that he was killed to interrupt service during the height of the pilgrimage. So the conspiracy chatter says it wasn't a heart attack and that he was poisoned either by sarin or VX. And this is something that wouldn't show up in an autopsy. So could Matthew and the others possibly be behind this kill?
I should have looked this up if sarin and VX are actually undetectable on an autopsy. Maybe I will in a minute, but
I totally forgot to look it up before we started recording.
They are like really strong reactive nerve agents that are used in like chemical warfare and stuff like that. So not great. So they talk about the background of The Exorcist, one of my favorite movies, like the movie The Exorcist, not this priest that's going around performing the exorcisms. They actually go to the house, or like the place where the house used to be, of what they say is the true story that inspired the story of the exorcism.
Which we're going to get into at the end of this episode.
Yeah, spoiler, we're going to talk about it. Prentice gives a background for why she thinks Matthew was murdered and why she's so passionate about getting justice for him. So Matthew and Emily Prentice know each other because they were in Rome together at the same time as teenagers. Her mom was stationed there, Jess, you would know, and his family was also there. And they became very close. And she got pregnant when she was 15. It wasn't Matthew's, but Matthew helped her through her abortion. And the priest at the church had told Emily if she had an abortion, she was no longer welcome in his congregation. So Matthew, after she had the procedure, went to church with her and like stared dead in the eye at the priest, like, say something, you won't. And he didn't. So Emily's just wants to do right by somebody who did right by her in that really vulnerable moment. So the church that Matthew belonged to, he didn't feel like he belonged to it anymore after that. That really shook his faith. And that's why
his parents don't
like Emily. Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. So the team brings a group of priests together to better understand what's happening and try to get into the head of the unsub. The priests are saying that if this man really did perform 3 exorcisms, he would likely be drained himself, and he would probably seek medical attention if he performed 3 exorcisms this close to each other. So Reed calls Penelope to run Catholic hospital records for patients experiencing exhaustion. And they get a hit. To their surprise, this priest they get a hit. And then, to their surprise, when they get to the hospital and confront the priest, he's very, like, unbothered by the fact that they're
He's
there.
like, oh, I've been expecting you.
I've been expecting you. And this priest has diplomatic status. He came over from Italy. So he has immunity against anything the FBI is trying to investigate.
Of course he does.
Of course. Gotta throw that in.
Why wouldn't he?
Yeah.
So he's brought in for questioning. So he was in Spain at the time that the other 3 men were, and he did know the priest who died. He claims that he was invited by the families to rid their loved ones of evil after this trip. So Prentice and Rossi then go to Matthew's house and talk to his mom, and they try to warn her that there's another murder that's going to happen, and they want to stop it, and they need the parents' help here to, like, figure out, like, who this next victim is going to be. And apparently his parents were there during Matthew's exorcism. They were convinced there was something in him that was evil, and they find out. So this all happened because one of Emily's friends, named John Cooley, in the very beginning, like, confronted her and was like, hey, like, Matthew's dead. His dad had called me and told me this. And then Emily's like, oh, like, you talked to John. Like, that's how I know everything. And like, Matthew's dad is like, I haven't talked to John in 20 years.
I haven't heard that name in 20 years.
So John was obviously, maybe he was in Spain too. And he was, like, still in connection with Matthew before all of this happened. So then they find out that John has to be the next victim here. Mm-hmm. So when John gets home, like, in the next cutscene, he's there. He's met by the priest, who was just, like, creepily waiting in the house for him.
John
seems to be the priest's MO.
He seemed, like, ready for him, though. He's like, he was
like, oh, you're here.
Yeah, so he seemed like he knew it was coming. And John, by the way, is played by Walton Goggins. Just an FYI for any Walton Goggins fans out there.
And Matthew's dad is Dexter's dad.
Yeah, connection between my favorite show and one of your favorite shows. Matthew's dad is played by the same man who plays Harry Morgan in Dexter, in the original Dexter. Not
Christian Slater.
Not Christian Slater. So, cue the attempted exorcism. I was gonna say the exorcism against his will, but I feel like every exorcism is against.
Isn't it?
No, well, the one we talked about, Annalise Michelle. She was a devout Catholic who sought the help herself. The true story we talked about. So she did. Prentice and Morgan get to John's house to stop this exorcism, and the team is sending this priest right back to Rome and taking away his immunity, because this was actually I thought it was really interesting. Emily basically, like, she started going after, like, the Italian government as a whole, like, blaming them for this. And then her boss is like, are you freaking kidding me? You're accusing the Italian government of this insane crime. Like, what are you trying to do?
And she's like, trying to stop me. So
to work around the immunity, they get the Vatican involved, and then they send him back to Rome, where they will do with him as they see fit for his crimes in Rome. And then he creepily warns Emily about the evil she's exposed herself to, and she gets a nosebleed. But she also may have been exposed to this.
She was inhaling VX.
Yeah, maybe. But I feel like it would have been a more dramatic reaction. I don't know. I've never inhaled VX, but
I don't plan on it either.
Don't try it. We just talked no snorting stuff, no inhaling weird things. So that ends our episode. They basically just kick the priest out, and they're like, Italy's gonna handle you. But I know, like, I was like waiting for, like, a big arrest, and they're like, all right, get out. I think the agents take him to the airport to get him on a plane right away, and they're like, any of your belongings are going to be shipped to you, but you need to leave right now.
They're like, get out of my sight.
Yeah. So going into our true crime stories, we have the stories of Hans Schmidt, a German Catholic priest who did commit murder, and the true story of Robbie Doe, who the movie The Exorcist is based off of, which they chatted about a little bit during the episode. So let's get into it.
You want to lead us off?
Sure. So Hans B. Schmidt was a German Catholic priest, rapist, convicted murderer, and suspected serial killer. He was executed at Sing Sing Prison in New York State for murdering and dismembering a pregnant woman in the United States. Hans Schmidt was born in the Bavarian town of, oh my God, Aschaffenburg? Aschaffenburg.
In Germany, yeah.
In Germany. To a Protestant father and a Catholic mother. Both sides of his family had a long history of mental illness, and from his early childhood, Hans was regularly beaten by his father and watched his father beat his mother. Even in childhood, Schmidt combined a deep religious devotion with promiscuity and a fascination with drinking blood and dismembering animals. Forgot about that bit. That is all very upsetting. According to relatives, Hans once beheaded 2 of his parents' geese and kept the severed heads in his pocket. No.
I feel like that's very, like animal abuse is very like, that's like one of the key things that people look for.
That's what
like serial killers.
The McDonald triad. What is it? It's setting fires, animal cruelty, and I think maybe wetting the bed, but that one's a little iffier.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's other things that can cause that, and that's not like every kid who wets the bed is going to be a serial killer. It happens. Like, that's
maybe it's like wetting
not
the bed,
what I'm insinuating.
Into
please.
Like teenage years.
Yeah. It can also be a sign of a few other concerning things, like like they're being abused. So like, I feel like that one's kind of up in the air. But yeah, I feel like the top one that people should be on the lookout for is animal cruelty at a very young age. He also frequented the village slaughterhouse daily, where he would watch the death and dissection of farm animals with fascination. And during his later seminary studies, Schmidt was arrested by the Bavarian police in 1905 and charged with forging diplomas for failing students. That seems like the least concerning things of the list of things that we've mentioned. That's what he got arrested for?
You know what? This is it. This is the tip of the iceberg.
That's all of the things I listed. That is that. Well, I feel like they get a lot of criminals that way. Like, Ted Bundy was arrested in Florida after he escaped for the second time. And he ran away to Florida. He was arrested because he had switched the plates, like license plates on different cars. And he put like a car license plate on a van or vice versa. I forget the entirety of it. And just like a patrol cop noted that the license plate was wrong. So he pulled him over and he went to pull out an ID and a bunch of his victims, either credit cards or IDs, fell out. And the guy was like, all right, we're taking you in. And then he confessed to being Ted Bundy, the serial killer. So it was a traffic stop. So it happens.
Classic white man in the 70s.
Literally. This is maybe even the 80s. Like, it's God. Although the public prosecutor of Mainz was determined to send Schmidt to prison, his father hired a lawyer who arranged for the charges to be dropped for reasons of, this is a quote, mental defect.
So although many knew him, he had like serious doubts about his moral and mental fitness to serve as a Catholic priest. Schmidt claimed that he was ordained by Bishop Kirsten of Mainz on December 23rd, 1904. In a later conversation with Manhattan alienists, he recalled, quote, "The bishop ordained me alone. I don't like to speak of it. The real ordination took place the night before St. Elizabeth. She ordained me herself. I was praying at the bedside when she appeared to me and said, 'I ordain you to the priesthood.' There was light during her appearance. I told no one. I thought it was best to keep it to myself. They would make fun of me. They always made fun of me for these things. They always expect others to do as they do. God speaks to different people in different ways." So during parish arrangements in the village that he was in, Schmidt molested altar boys, had several affairs with women. He consorted with prostitutes, and then meanwhile,
sex workers. Sorry.
No,
it's okay.
Sex workers.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Schmidt, I'm reading mostly from the Wikipedia page. So meanwhile, Schmidt's creative way of saying mass and eccentric sermons led his parishioners and fellow priests to complain about him to the Monsignor and to the bishop. When it became clear that no other parish assignments would be forthcoming in the Diocese of Mainz, Schmidt emigrated to the United States in 1909. He was first assigned to St. John's Roman Catholic Church in Louisville, Kentucky. There, a rift with the senior pastor resulted in Schmidt's transfer to St. Boniface's Church in New York City.
I know where that is. That's weird. Okay, sorry.
That's crazy.
I'm a New Yorker and I've been there before. In New York City in 1912, Schmidt met Anna Mueller, the housekeeper at the rectory of St. Boniface Church, who had emigrated from the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1910. In his conversations with alienists, Schmidt claimed to have heard a voice from God ordering him to, quote, love Anna. She refused his advances, but eventually began having a secret relationship with Schmidt. Beginning in December 1912, Schmidt was also having a secret relationship with a New York City dentist named Ernest Murrett, with whom he operated a counterfeiting ring. He's just like...
He's getting around.
That wasn't what I was going to say. I mean, yes. I was just like, he's just like doing all sorts of other, I don't want to say like petty crimes, but like the counterfeiting crimes, like counterfeiting the diplomas, counterfeiting. He's like involved in a counterfeiting ring in New York City. Like, yeah, it's just an interesting thing. I don't know. I've never thought about I mean, I know they say there's an escalation to crimes, particularly with serial killers or serial attackers. But I've noticed like if counterfeiting is one of those things, because I feel like it seems like just trying to get one over on somebody. Like you're trying to like show that you know more. Like you can trick,
and then it's like
you can
the
trick
thrill
experts.
That you're getting away with it.
Yeah, like I feel like that might be the same kind of psychology that like a serial killer gets out of like repeat offenses, you know? If anybody's a forensic psychologist, let us know, because I'm just talking. I am just
it sounds right,
saying my thoughts out loud, and I could be totally wrong. So Schmidt later claimed to have enjoyed his time with Murrett more than Anna. Despite his subsequent transfer to St. Joseph's Church in Harlem, Schmidt and Anna continued their secret relationship. It was later revealed that they were married at a secret ceremony, which Schmidt performed himself. Can you do that?
He married himself. What?
Not to keep talking about Ted Bundy, because I hate that motherfucker.
Horrible person.
He also did like he married Carol Ann Boone while acting as his own attorney. She was on the witness stand, and he performed a wedding and like married her. And it's God, I hate him so much. I hate him. So Schmidt also wrote their names on a marriage certificate and told Anna that he was about to leave the priesthood for her. And during a time with Anna on a high altar of St. Joseph's Church, Schmidt received what he claimed was a command from God to sacrifice her. The command, he said, was repeated so insistently that Schmidt told Anna, who then called him crazy. And soon after, Anna informed him that she was pregnant. And on the night of September 2nd, 1913, Schmidt went to the apartment they had rented while posing as a married couple. And he slashed Anna's throat and drank her blood and dismembered her body and threw pieces from a ferry into the Hudson River. That's crazy.
That's brutal.
That is. This is, oh my gosh. This seems like, so there's the classification of serial killer, the organized and the disorganized. This seems like the disorganized.
Yeah, there was no
variety.
plan.
It seems like impulsive. It's not methodical and planned out, and it's, yeah. Mm-hmm. Again, any forensic psychologist, feel free to correct me. Schmidt then returned to St. Joseph's Church, offered Mass, and administered Holy Communion as though nothing out of the usual had happened.
So after pieces of Anna's torso washed ashore at Cliffside Park and Weehawken, New Jersey, Hudson County Police detectives found a price tag that was still attached to the pillowcase used to wrap part of her body. So they used that tag, and they found that it was traced back to a factory in Newark, New Jersey, which sold exclusively to a Manhattan furniture dealer. So they went with this investigation. It took them over to the New York City Police Department, and they assigned one of their chief detectives to the case.
Sorry to interrupt you.
It's okay.
This is one of the reasons I love investigative work.
Mm-hmm.
Like things that you'd never think could be a clue.
It's like the break in what you needed.
Yeah.
So they questioned the building superintendent, who then revealed that the apartment that they were now investigating was occupied by a married couple. The husband was described as a man with a heavy German accent who had given his name as H. Schmidt. When a 3-day stakeout revealed no one arriving, the investigator on the case, or the inspector on the case, he ordered one of the detectives to break into the apartment. A cursory search found that the floor had been recently scrubbed, but large amounts of dried blood were still found on the walls. A large blood-stained knife was also found on the kitchen shelf. Men's clothing with the name of A. Van Dyke. A. Van Dyke was like an alias that Schmidt was using at the time. That was sewn into the linen that was found, as were the letters in both German and English addressed to Hans Schmidt. Many of the letters were from women in Germany, and the largest number, however, were from an Anna, whose most recent address was, I guess, somewhere near them. I don't really know much about like the layout of New York. It was 428 East 17th Street.
Giving out the address.
Anybody to anybody?
Oh, so yeah, East 17th. No, I'm just kidding. I am from New York, but not New York City. So
so the inspector and one of the detectives had visited this address, and they learned that Anna had moved out after receiving a job as a housekeeper at St. Boniface's Church. So they visited the church, and they were told by the senior pastor that Anna had been his housekeeper and she had transferred to St. Joseph's Church. Upon being asked if they knew the name of Hans Schmidt, the priest there described him as a priest who had formerly been assigned to St. Boniface, but then had moved to St. Joseph's. I thought there was going to be more there, but that was like very straightforward.
Yeah.
So they go to the rectory at St. Joseph's, and they are pounding on the door, and the senior pastor there, he opens the door, he lets them in to like look around, and they find Schmidt. Upon being confronted by the inspector and the detectives, Schmidt admitted, quote, I killed her because I loved her. Schmidt then described the murder and dismemberment in detail. As his fellow priests watched in horror, he was taken into police custody.
During the first trial, he pled not guilty by reason of his sanity. And his defense team accordingly used Schmidt's bisexuality and claims of hearing voices as proof of his psychosis. Okay. I also just want to make something clear. Bisexuality or being gay is not psychosis. This is 1910s.
This is the 1900s.
This is the 1910s, and I just want to make it very, very clear. This is not our thought. Even though we're saying that they used it, that is not what we're saying. The defense also demonstrated that mental illness ran in Schmidt's family, and they called a psychologist, Smith Ali Jalif, who testified that Schmidt's family tree showed up to 60 near or distant relatives who displayed signs of mental instability, and therefore Schmidt should be spared the death penalty because he too was insane. In rebuttal, the prosecution called in their own witness, including multiple alienists, who questioned Schmidt before the trial. On the other hand, they concluded that Schmidt was completely sane in spite of claims of hearing voices telling him to sacrifice Anna Mueller. Mueller. Sorry, I might be butchering that name. I'm trying very hard. I know, I want to get it right because she's the victim here and she deserves to have her name said correctly. Mueller. However, the prosecution efforts were in vain. At the conclusion of the trial, December 1913, a hung jury was declared. The second trial began approximately 2 weeks later, and this time the prosecution introduced new testimony. In April 1913, well before the defendant received the alleged command from God to sacrifice his wife, Schmidt had convinced a fellow German immigrant, a woman named Bertha Zeck, to pose as Anna Mueller and to purchase a $5,000 life insurance policy in her name. The policy listed Schmidt as the sole beneficiary. And on February 5th, 1914, after only 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. After being sentenced to the death penalty, he said, "I'm satisfied with the verdict. I would rather die today than tomorrow." And he was sent to Sing Sing to await execution.
So apart from killing his pregnant, very young wife, further investigation revealed that Schmidt had a second apartment where he had set up counterfeiting workshops. And authorities suspected Schmidt as they suspected him of as many as 4 other murders to be connected to. He had also been seen with a woman named Helen Green. Green left for Chicago the month before Anna's murder and had then disappeared. Police couldn't find any traces of her, and when he moved to America, Schmidt was seen with another woman who he claimed was his wife. She also had disappeared. Schmidt was suspected in the deaths of 2 children. The owner of the apartment complex where Schmidt lived said that sometimes he saw him bringing in like 5-year-old boys to his apartment, and Schmidt claimed the boy was his son. That boy had since disappeared. When the woman asked the boy for his name, he said it was August Van Dyke. Schmidt became an alternate suspect in the murder of Alma Kellner, age 9, whose body was found buried in the basement of St. John's Church in Louisville, Kentucky, where he had worked. The body had been burned, while authorities suspected the killer tried to dismember her. The janitor, Joseph Wendling, was convicted and sentenced to life in prison for the murder, based on circumstantial evidence and bloody clothing found at his house. And upon the request of Alma's uncle, Wendling was pardoned and deported to his home country of France in 1935. And that kind of concludes the case of Hans Schmidt. And I just wanted to find something that was somewhat similar to the episode with serial killer priests.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that this kind of demonstrated it pretty well.
Yeah, I've never heard of that case, which is
Me either. So I thought it was really cool to I think it's really cool to find those stories that you never hear about.
Yeah. I'm also just surprised because I'm familiar with some of the areas that were mentioned in the story, which is why I
because you are a New Yorker.
I'm a New Yorker. I'm walking here. No. Guys, relax. I'm from Long Island. I'm not from New York City. I'm not. I was just gonna quote New Girl. Schmidt, I'm not from Manhattan. I'm from Long Island. Sorry, everybody.
What is it, 619?
No, I'm not going to say it because it's my zip code and I don't want to say it on air.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'm not going to say my full phone number. In the late I'm just going right into the next story after my awkward Long Island talk. So this is the story of Robbie Doe, who was addressed in the episode that we talked about, Criminal Minds, and was the inspiration for the story of the Exorcist of the movie, the very popular movie. In the late 1940s in the United States, priests of the Catholic Church performed a series of exorcisms on an anonymous boy who was documented under the pseudonym Roland Doe or Robbie Mannheim. The 14-year-old boy was said to be the victim of a demonic possession, and the events were recorded by the attending priest, Raymond J. Bishop. Subsequent supernatural claims surrounding the events were used as elements in William Peter Blatty's 1971 novel, The Exorcist, which I should say that too, inspired the book that inspired the movie. In December 2021, the Skeptical Inquirer reported the purported true identity of Roland Doe, and I'm not going to say it. because I think he deserves privacy.
Yeah.
So Robbie Doe is good enough.
You guys can look that up on your
If you're
own.
that curious, but please respect his privacy, because unless I'm misremembering the research.
He did pass away in 2020. I'm not sure what he passed away from.
He did pass away, but
yeah.
We're still gonna, you know what? He was anonymous for a reason. We're gonna keep him anonymous.
So in mid-1949, several newspaper articles printed anonymous reports of an alleged possession and exorcism. The source for these reports is thought to be the family's former pastor, Luther Miles Schultz. According to one account, a total of 48 people witnessed this exorcism, 9 of them
Jesuits.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't say that. According to another author, Thomas B. Allen, Jesuit priest Father Walter H. Holleran was one of the last surviving eyewitnesses of the events and participated in the exorcism. Allen wrote that a diary kept by attending priest Father J. Raymond Bishop detailed the exorcism performed on the person identified as Roland Doe, aka Robbie. Speaking in 2013, Allen emphasized that definitive proof that the boy known as Robbie was possessed by malevolent spirits is unattainable. According to Allen, Halloran was expressed by skepticism about potential paranormal events before his death. When he asked in an interview to make a statement verifying that the boy had actually been demonically possessed, he responded by saying, "No, I can't go on record. I never made an absolute statement about the things because I don't feel I was qualified."
According to Thomas B. Allen, after Aunt Harriet's death, the family experienced strange noises, furniture moving on its own accord, and ordinary objects such as vases flying around or levitating when the boy was nearby. The family turned to their Lutheran pastor, Luther Miles Schultz, for help. Long interested in the parapsychology, Schultz arranged for the boy to spend the night in his home in order to observe him. When parapsychologist Joseph Banks Rhine learned that Schultz claimed he witnessed a household object fly across the room and furniture move by itself, Rhine wondered if Schultz unconsciously exaggerated some of the facts. Schultz advised the boy's parents to see a Catholic priest. According to the traditional story, the boy underwent a number of exorcisms. Edward Hughes, a Roman Catholic priest, conducted an exorcism on Robbie at Georgetown University Hospital, a Jesuit institution. I was just going to say, I can't believe they did it at a hospital, but it's a religious institution, I think. During the exorcism, the boy allegedly slipped one of his hands out of the restraints, broke the bed spring from under his mattress, and used it as an impromptu weapon, slashing the priest's arm, resulting in the exorcism being halted. After the failed exorcism, additional incidents occurred, including unexplained scratches on Robbie's body, and the boy's mother, she was a native St. Louis, Missouri resident, desperately sought opportunities for a change of scenery. So upon seeing the word Louis appear in scratches on Robbie's rib cage, the family resolved to travel to St. Louis. The family stayed at a relative's house in the inner belt of the suburb of Belnor. I'm sorry to anybody from Missouri, again, if I'm butchering town names. During their stay, Roland's cousin contacted one of their professors at St. Louis University. Bishop, who in turn spoke to William S. Bowden, an associate of College Church, and together both priests visited Roland in his relative's home, where they allegedly observed shaking bed, flying objects, and the boy speaking in a guttural voice and exhibiting an aversion to anything sacred. So if you've seen or read The Exorcist, this all sounds very familiar. That's like all I'm picturing right now.
I've never watched it. It's too scary, too real. Like, I don't like horror movies that feel too real for me.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one, though. I was Reagan for Halloween one year, and I crushed it. No brag, but I'm bragging. I did
Self-brag.
I did really good. My Reagan costume.
It looked awesome.
Yeah. Bowden was granted permission from the Archbishop to perform another exorcism. The exorcism took place at the Alexian Brothers Hospital in St. Louis, later called South City Hospital. And before the next exorcism ritual began, another priest, Walter Halloran, who we mentioned earlier, was called to the psychiatric wing of the hospital, where he was asked to assist. William Van Roo, A third Jesuit priest was also asked to assist. Halloran stated that during the scene, words such as evil and hell, along with other various marks, appeared on this teenager's body. Allegedly, during the Litany of the Saints portion of the exorcism ritual, the boy's mattress began to shake. That is a famous scene in The Exorcist. And Linda Blair, who played Reagan, I don't want to be wrong about this, but I think she might have gotten injured during that bed shaking scene.
What year was that made?
It was in the 70s, or maybe it came out. Came out in the 70s, so I want to say it was filmed either in the early 70s, maybe late 60s, but I think it was 70s. Moreover, Roland broke Halloran's nose during the process. And sorry, Roland or Robbie, he goes by either pseudonym. Halloran told a reporter that after the exorcism rite was over, the anonymous subject of the exorcism went on to lead a rather ordinary life. Which, spoiler alert, happens in The Exorcism.
So in his 1993 book called Possessed, The True Story of the Exorcism, author Thomas B. Allen offered the consensus of today's experts that Robbie was just a deeply disturbed boy. There was nothing supernatural about him. And during his investigation, they discovered that the exorcism did not take place at the original, I guess, address in Maryland, and the boy.
So the show was wrong?
Oh my God.
Oh no, Criminal Minds is wrong.
These shows are never wrong.
It's the place we went. Red Flag. That's where they went to and said that it was based on the story.
The boy never lived in Mount Rainier. He was actually from Cottage City, Maryland, somewhere. And much of the commonly accepted information about the story is based on hearsay. None of it is really documented and was never fact-checked. And there's also no evidence that Father Albert Hughes visited the boy's home and had him admitted to the Georgetown Hospital, requested that the boy be restrained at the hospital and attempted the exorcism there, or that he was injured by the boy during the said exorcism. And there's also ample evidence refuting claims that Father Hughes suffered an emotional breakdown and disappeared from Cottage City community.
This case, however, still inspired the 1971 novel The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty, who in turn, see, I should have waited until I got to this part of the story, which in turn was, I wanted to say 1973, which in turn was adapted into the 1973 horror film with the same title. So the case also inspired the 2000s movie Possessed, which is said to be closer to the story of Allen's book that Jess mentioned before. So a documentary was made about the case titled In the Grip of Evil. And another documentary was made in 2010 titled The Haunted Boy, The Secret Diary of the Exorcist, where a group of investigators traveled to the locations in question and uncovered the diary that is said to be kept by William S. Bodern. And in the episode we just discussed, during an odd investigation in a few crimes, Agent Rossi mentions Robbie and the exorcism practices to Agent Prentice because it pertains to their case.
And that kind of leads us into the end of this episode. There's a lot to uncover here.
Yeah.
And get into. We talked a lot.
Yes, we did. But it's a podcast.
But I think overall, we tallied a total of 2 green flags.
I don't know if we had any red flags.
Really no red flags.
It was hard for me to give red flags because, like, the things I wanted to give red flags for, like, just walking in and demanding to see the body even though you're not next of kin.
But you're the FBI.
You're the FBI. Like, anybody else I would have given a red flag for. But
yeah,
it's hard to give a red flag to the FBI when they can just take control of the case. Yeah.
So I think overall, this episode of Criminal Minds does pass in terms of forensic accuracy. At least in our opinion, it does.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of Inside the Morgue. You can find us on Instagram at Inside the Morgue Pod. Like we said before, this episode was a listener suggestion to watch Criminal Minds. So if you guys have any other shows or specific episodes out there that you want us to watch, go ahead and DM us, email us, email Dylan maybe.
Just bother Dylan.
But yeah, we'll be back next time with a brand new dissection. Bye.
Bye.
Young John!